Hey, hi, it's really nice to meet you at last, and thanks for being a subscriber.
Likewise, it's a pleasure.
So, do you want to start telling me how you got into trading?
So, when we had a first catch up, I did mention that I absolutely had no idea about trading, and I started this something out of passion, and I wanted to learn something new, and I had no clue. To a point, I even didn't know what shorts or longs meant.
Okay.
But after our first chat, and obviously after subscribing to one of your program, it did give me quite a bit of knowledge, and
Oh,
now I'm more familiar with the terms. And especially, what I find more beneficial for me is I know where I can start a trade because there is always a guideline. And at the same time, you're also guiding where you should stop, and
yeah.
what the targets are. So it's very much for a beginner like myself. It's very, very helpful.
Okay, great. I see. So it's helping you understand how to structure a trade, which is something you
Yeah.
basically know before. And are you doing your own analysis? Are you looking at your own charts?
Yes, you did mention that, it was important to look into the hourly chart and it's important to look into what the patterns are, the candlesticks are. So I am trying and doing my own analysis. And what's also important is I read the strategy that you set for the day, what you think out of your analysis. That's also helpful. Again, it's very much about trial and error, right?
Yeah, it
You
really
cannot
is.
always be 100% right. Sometimes I think it's right to probably take a buy, but the market goes opposite, and that's where I get stuck. Now, like I mentioned, I try and do most of my trading on my phone because I also have a job. I'm working. I find it a little difficult to understand the pattern from a bigger perspective. And also, what I find quite hard is the news based trading, basically on days that you have certain news that can really impact or rather affect whatever analysis has been given for the day.
Okay, must say you sound pretty experienced already. I post charts in the Telegram group, obviously, which I hope they're helpful. The
Yeah.
idea is you can sort of compare them on, well, you obviously can't do that during the days because you've got your job. When do you find time to go through charts?
I go through them in first thing in the morning.
Okay, that's great. So you've kind of got a picture in your brain before you even go to work.
Yeah. Yes,
Oh,
I you do write your analysis on top of the chart that you give if if you should continue doing that or not. And I especially mentioned that no, it's very important because I find the explanation that what exactly you are looking in the technical analysis, this is very helpful for a beginner to understand why your chart says that take a sell at this level and put a stop loss at a certain level. This is very helpful because your analysis explains that. So, really, as a beginner, and me not knowing what to look into the chart specifically, your chart plus the analysis really helps.
and have you watched the video today that I posted where I go into the euro US dollar, pound dollar, and I go right out on the monthly chart and I break it right down monthly, weekly, daily, 4 hour, 1 hour, and then I zoom right in and I've got levels all over the place, but it shows you long term trends and then shorter term trends and gives you a whole breakdown of how I start my analysis from scratch.
No, I have it planned later for my weekend. So I'm going to spend some time over those videos as well. And, I really appreciate that you're making these videos for beginners, the 5 day challenge. Very interesting. I find it really gives you an insight and, some mistakes that the first time traders would make, like you enter a trade without a stop loss. This is something you cannot afford to do, right? So these are certain tips and tricks that really helps.
Okay, that's really good. Yeah, I recorded that 5 day challenge, and basically, it was actually really good for me because it just allowed me to process all the mistakes that I've made over the years and then actually put it on paper and work out stages that, because I do things on autopilot now, because I'm doing it for 35 years, but it was good for me to just break it all down stage by stage. And if you need more practice on the technical analysis, of course, I've got a YouTube channel with videos going back about a decade.
I have a question. Now, for the
Yeah.
technical analysis, is it way different when you sit on a proper desktop where your screens are big, you get a bigger picture, versus if you're trying to check on your phone? Like, does it make a lot of difference?
It really does make a lot of difference. I'm on the move a lot. So I've only got a laptop. I don't have a desktop, but I have two plug-in screens and I stick them in. I end up with three screens wherever I'm traveling in the world. I can just set this up. So I have 4 hour, 1 hour, and then I have weekly and daily. It doesn't really matter what order you have them in, but that's how I set my screens up. And then I can just, glance across and quite quickly get at least a picture of what the trends are doing. For me, trend is your friend. It's the most important thing to start to try to, when I start to break down a chart, I need to know the trend. Now, it's useful for me to know what the weekly trend is because if we're in a massive bear trend and we've only been going up for 3 weeks, I need to know about that because it means probably the upside is limited. Whereas if I'm only looking at a 4 hour chart and it shows me this fantastic bull trend for the last 3 weeks, I might be thinking, oh, this is so strong. I'm gonna buy it, every time we go down, and I might be missing the big picture. So it's good just to be able to glance at the weekly chart. It doesn't even have to take up that much space on your screen, but just to remind yourself, what's the big picture? Are we about to run into some massive resistance level? In fact, when you look at the video, you'll see in the euro, US dollar, and the pound dollar, recently we ran into these massive longer term resistance levels, we were looking so strong. And if you didn't know what was on the weekly chart or the monthly chart, you'd have no idea why we've just turned around. And so for me, it looks like that was just a bounce in a bear trend. But someone else who might only be looking at the daily or the 4 hour, you might have missed the big picture. I now think that those markets have resumed the longer term bear trends, whereas someone else might be thinking, oh, I'm going to keep buying that every time it goes down.
Yes, that does make sense. So, would you say it's for an intraday trading, like something that I do, and I specifically trade on gold and indices, which is your S&P and your US 100. So, do you recommend that I always look into the weekly and the 4 hour and the daily chart?
Say, for example, you get a bearish engulfing candle on a weekly chart. That's something you got to
Right.
pay attention to. I'm not one for putting too much emphasis on a single candle. A single candle isn't going to make me change my mind about a trend normally, or is not going to get me out of a position. But on the weekly chart, if you had a bearish engulfing candle in a bull trend, would be an alarm bell in my brain saying, hang on a sec, this might be a warning that the bull trend is at least going to consolidate, if not turn around. So that is worth a look once a week on a Sunday. I'd say the 4 hour chart is actually where I focus on my trend identification because for us, when we're running a trade for maybe a day or two maximum, that is a good time period for me to be following the trend. The daily chart is also worth looking at because sometimes we're about to come down to a big support level. It might be a fib level and a trend line, and it might be 200-day moving average. And you need to know that it's about to hit that support level, even though we may have been going down for 2 weeks. You really need to look at I think you need to look at all those time frames, even the 1 hour. I think you need to do that. And I put Fibonacci levels on all of those. You'll see that from my videos.
Yeah,
So to answer your question, I really would try to get more screen space.
sure. And that is really then the key. What do you think about algo trading? This is something I've heard from some of my friends that algo trading is a new thing. Do you know anything about it?
Yeah, I do know, and I've got some experience. Algo trading's probably been around for 10, 20 years now in some form. I've tried it. I haven't tried to algo my technical analysis techniques. I quite like doing the analysis anyway, so I don't particularly want a computer to do it for me. I have seen some AI and some algo charting programs that pick trades. They're a bit hit and miss sometimes. So I'm quite happy to do the analysis. But what I did do, I tried to develop an algo to actually trade my signals. And that shouldn't have been a difficult process. But what we try to do is refine the entry. So I pick the levels and then the algo decides whether it should take the trade or not by looking at shorter term timeframes. So it's looking for confirmation from the charts, from a candle, from a pattern, something like that, that the level's going to hold. I couldn't get it accurate enough. Some months we were making 20, 25%, and then some months it was down to 5% or minus 5%. The other thing is, if you've got an algo that's actually doing trade identification, the problem is markets don't always do the same thing. So one algo might really work really well when you're in a bull trend. It can identify support levels every time you pull back and it'll get you into a support level, or it might average into a long. And that's great because eventually when the bull trend resumes, you'll be on side on the trade. Problem is an algo that works when the markets are going up or down probably doesn't work at all when markets start to consolidate and you don't know they're consolidating. for a certain period of time. That you have a manual element to every algo, I think. Or you have to have two or three algos that can suit different conditions and you switch one off and switch the other one on, something like that.
And you've been into trading for all these years. Is there one particular thing that you would recommend to trade? Like, I mean, of course, everything is risky, right? Trading currencies is better than metal versus indices. What's your expertise? Where have you been, let's say, 90% accurate? And for new traders like myself, what do you recommend? Something that's low risk and you have higher return.
Yeah, good question. I get asked that quite a lot. Actually, for me, because I have a purely technical approach to trading, I'm looking for setups that suit my strategy. So I don't particularly like consolidation patterns. Consolidation meaning like a triangle or a channel, something that's basically sideways, a flag, a pennant. Those kind of patterns I struggle with because you don't know that they're those patterns for a significant period of time. If you've been in a bull trend and you start to consolidate, you don't know that you're only going sideways. Might be 2 weeks before you figured out you're going sideways. It takes a while to carve out the upper trend line and the lower trend line because, of course, you need at least 2 points to start a trend line. And for me, you need 3 points really to confirm the trend line. So by the time that's done, okay, now you know that it's a consolidation pattern. But in the meantime, you might have lost money trying to hold on to a long position that just isn't working. It's not really about which market I trade. It's more about which markets are showing a decent enough trend that I can feel confident to buy at a support level or buy on a break above a resistance level because I know that the bull trend is resuming. It's more finding the patterns and the trends that are working for me. Having said that, I like Euro US dollar because it's very liquid. Cable A gold is one of my favorites for sure. And I think my signals are probably better in gold. You were talking about indices. I usually like the S&P, but lately that's been just moving sideways. They're probably my favorite markets.
All right. And I also feel now, of course, I do receive the chart first thing in the morning, but during the day, because they are mostly US market based, it goes very slow. And I feel it becomes very active during the day. I mean, after 4:30 p.m. Dubai time,
Yeah,
basically
when the
when
US opens.
yes, when the US opens. So, are there any other, metals that could be traded where you can probably be active during the day rather than only trying to trade during the US market opens?
Good question. I think gold tends to move quite steadily. It doesn't have particular quiet periods or particular busy periods. But it's definitely true to say that when the US opens, because at that time, which is about UK time, Europe is still open. Okay, just coming back from lunch when the US opens. So two major business centers are open. So you're getting a lot of volume. That's the maximum volume time of the day. When Asia shuts and Europe opens, yes, you're right, it's more quiet. There's less volume. When Europe shuts, the volumes dry up a little bit more, of course. The most volatile period is, as you've spotted, just as the US opens.
In order to be successful and take less risk, do you suggest scalping could be one of the methods of trading, or do you prefer the long term, the intraday basically trading?
Scalping is definitely something that you could try. Be careful not to overtrade. You can get carried away with it. If you're going to scalp, I would suggest you don't really go shorter term than the 1 hour chart. If you go 15-minute chart, you'll probably be doing 4 trades an hour. It's very draining. Or if you only had an hour or two to trade each day, then maybe you would like that. I think you've got to strike a balance between trading for entertainment and actually trading for income. Some people just love the buzz of the trade and can't wait to put the next trade on. I'm actually quite lazy, which is why I've developed the strategy that I give to you and the other subscribers, which is a kind of set and forget. I call it set and forget. I do my analysis in the morning for 2 or 3 hours. I look at all the levels where I would be willing to put a trade on where I believe it's a low risk opportunity. And then I put all the pending orders in and just wait to see which ones get executed. And then I might put 9 orders in and only, as you know, only 3 might get executed that day. That's fine by me. If 2 win and 1 loses, I've had a great day. I don't want to be an active trader. I'm 55 years old. I've been doing it for 35 years. I don't want to sit in front of a screen all day. Someone else might absolutely love sitting in front of a screen all day and they might want to trade shorter time frames and they might want to be more of a scalper.
In that case, do you always like to set auto trades? Is that something that you recommend?
I really do because I find that when I put a trade on and I start watching it, that's when I start messing up. I like to plan my trade before I have a position on, when I'm completely unbiased. So I've bought gold. I'm doing my analysis. I know that subconsciously I'm looking for a reason to be long gold. I can't help it. You're looking for something to back up the reason that you're in the trade. You're not going to look for reasons not to be in the trade. So I like to do the analysis when I really don't have positions on, and then I can be completely unbiased. The other thing is when the trade has been executed, if I start watching the market, it drives me nuts because more often than not, the market's up, it's down, it's driving you mad. You start looking at the 30-minute candles and the 15-minute candles, and you start seeing things that aren't really relevant at all. That candle on the 15-minute chart, maybe that means it's about to turn around and go in the opposite direction, and I better get out. So I try to just plan my trade and then trade the plan and not look at the market when I'm in a trade. Not too much anyway. I mean, you do have to have a bit because you need to trail your stop, but not overdo it.
I think this is something that I really need to learn because I'm looking at my phone constantly. It's also distracting me from my work. And at the same time, this leads to so many wrong decisions that I'll end up making. And I keep wondering that, on certain days, the levels that you mention on the chart where you should, let's say, buy a trade or, for example, sell a trade, and I'm constantly looking on my phone. I'm like, okay, we're not reaching that level. Let's just try, and take a sell or a buy from any level for that matter. And that is such a wrong trade.
Yeah.
So this is something that I'm learning, and I would try to execute auto trades as well. What is one secret that you would, advise me, or for all the beginners, that one should have in mind while trading so that you don't lose out on your equity?
Okay. So FOMO, fear of missing out, that is a big driver, especially when you start trading. Just exactly what you've described. I'm looking at the phone, the market's moving around. Why am I not in a position? Oh, it's just jumped 20 pips. I should have been in there. You can't catch every move. You really have to wait. If you do 3 trades a day, that's enough. If you have 2 winners and 1 loser, let's say you make 40 pips on the 2 winners and you lose 20 pips on the 1 loser, then you had a great day. You made
Yeah.
60 pips. 60 pips a day. It's a great amount of money. Slow and steady, being consistent. It's a marathon, not a sprint. So
Mm.
you do have to get used to sitting on your hands and just waiting for the right opportunity. FOMO is a thing that just causes you to overtrade. Now, the other thing I find when I'm constantly looking at the phone, when I've got a position on, when I've got a trade on, it's usually because I'm taking more risk than I'm comfortable with. I'm not worried that the trade's going to go wrong. I'm worried that I'm going to lose an amount of money that I don't want to lose. I'm taking too much risk. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas when I'm trading within my comfort zone, I sometimes just forget I've got the trade on. I think if you're staring at your phone and you're just not feeling confident about the trade. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Good. I do not have any further questions for
Okay.
now.
Well, they were really good questions. So thank you very much. Lovely to meet you. Thanks for meeting me today.
You too. Thank you so much for your time, Jason. Good day.